everyone, how's it going? Welcome to today's Wild Rift video. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at my tier list for every single role for patch 3.0a. I'm using my website, Wild Rift 5. If you don't know this website already, it's a website that I use for all my guides and everything as well. It's a great website, and the guys behind the scenes work really hard on it. As you can see, every single champion in the game, you just click on champion, shows you the best build, it shows you a video from my YouTube as well, everything like that as well. So it's a great website if you want a guide for any single champion. I'll leave the link down in the description for the website. But for this tier list, as mentioned, every single role I will be going over. I like to focus more on two things: how strong the champion is and how easy the champion is to play. Obviously, I'll explain to you some of the changes with patch 3.0a as well and how that's affecting my changes to the tier list. But as always, this is just my opinion. Don't take it to heart or anything if your champion's in C tier, for example, like Timo or Nasus. But as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you like the video. Comment down below if you think I should change anything or if anything should be added at all. And as always, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more Wild Rift content, which will be my A to Z guide continuation and also some other great content coming out very soon. Right, let's start this show on the road, shall we? First up, Fiora in the Baron lane. The queen of the Baron lane, I think people like to call her now. Because of nerfs to Set, Jace, Camille, other champions as well, and all these AD bruisers, Fiora, in my opinion, is the best solo queue Baron laner in the game. Really strong in the early game, great in the late game as well if you can scale up and if you can farm as much as you can. Amazing champion to play, really fun to play as well, to be honest. It can also be played in the jungle as well, which we'll talk about a little bit with the jungle tier list. Moving on to S, just another thing as well, this is not in any order from left to right, this is just tiers. So, like for example, I'm not saying that Riven is better than Garen, I'm not saying Darius is better than Set, etc. It's just in tiers. I haven't done it in terms of left to right. Riven in the S tier. Now, Riven hasn't really been played too much, to be fair, but she's quite a strong champion, especially in solo queue as well. A lot of outplay potential, a lot of mobility as well, which is always quite good in solo queue. So you can kind of catch out enemies off guard and you can kind of capitalize on their mistakes as well, which is always quite helpful. Darius as well is another AD bruiser, really strong right now. I would say probably up there as maybe one of the best AD bruisers now, especially with the other nerfs to other champions. Really great, really strong. Has the ultimate potential as well to keep on getting them resets, which is quite nice. Renekton hasn't really been seeing too much play, but is still really strong. Has a lot of lockdown potential. Really tanky at the same time as well. And when you go for like this Blade the Ring King Black Cleaver build, you can do a lot of damage surprisingly, and you'll still be tanky at the same time. Has healing, has dashes, has pretty much everything that you need. Now, talking about the nerf champions, Set, Jace, and Camille. Now, Set and Jace was probably hit a lot harder than Camille, but I feel like all these champions are still sitting in the S tier. Set still offers quite a lot. His kit just in general is just really strong. Has a suplex, has a big massive shield, has a lot of early game damage potential as well. The same with Jace, even though Jace did get a little bit nerfed in the early game. Both these two champions are really strong, have a lot of burst potential in the early game, and can really be effective as well as it comes to the mid and the late game as well. And then Camille, she still has a lockdown potential. She still has a lot of mobility as well with her hook shot, and she still is really strong. And then Garen, probably the easiest Baron laner to play in the entire game in my opinion, and honestly one of the strongest as well. Really tanky, does a lot of damage, has a lot of tanky stats, has the kind of the execution as well with the ultimate, with the true damage as well. And just overall, all these S tier champions are really strong. Moving on down to A tier, first up is Kali. Can really struggle in the early game against most of these AD bruisers because some of them like to play really aggressive and can do a lot of damage as well, which makes it Kali kind of struggle. But when it gets to the late game, oh, excuse me, once it gets to the late game with a Kali into the mid game as well, once you get a few items under your belt, she can do a lot of execution damage. She can be really strong. She's very mobile. She has a lot of damage. She has her invisibility as well. Her second ability was probably her most annoying ability as well. But yeah, overall, a great champion that you can try and play, but like I said, not really the easiest champion to play. Gragas, we don't really see too much in the Baron lane. We more see him in the mid lane than the jungle now, especially after the boss. Mid lane full AP Gragas has been quite popular, which I'll explain about in a little bit. But if in top lane, you can still play full AP Gragas if you want to, or you can go for a more tanky Gragas build. Both will work completely fine depending on your type of playstyle. Again, sitting in the A+, not really too strong, but still can work really well. Wukong kind of the same as well. Is quite strong in the Baron lane. They're trying to move, well, Riot is trying to move Wukong up into the Baron lane by nerfing their jungle, but giving buffs to laning Wukong. you still don't see him too much because these tanky champions like Gragas and Wukong that like to build some more tanky stats more than Bruiser. I'm not really seeing a lot of play because, well, especially in competitive, because obviously all these AD bruisers are so much stronger. But Wukong can still work, really easy to play. Has the clone as well, which can kind of catch enemies off guard a little bit, which is always quite nice. Olaf as well with his Ragnarok, especially with the amount of crowd control that's in the game right now. Ragnarok on Olaf, really strong. Has a lot of damage potential as well. The wave clearer is there as well, which is really strong. I completely forgot to mute my pop-ups. There we go. I'm muting my pop-ups now. There you go. So pop-up from one of my streams. So make sure you check out my Twitch stream. Nice little plug in there. But yeah, Olaf really strong. Does quite good in laning phase as well. Has a lot of wave clear. Has a lot of damage potential as well. And you can really put pressure on your lane opponent as Olaf. Pantheon as well. A lot of lane pressure. A lot of early game pressure as well. Has the stun available. Has a lot of poke as well. And has that Grand Skyfall. When it gets to late game, you could try and rotate around the map. Use your Grand Skyfall to try and get an advantage in other lanes as well, which most of the other champions don't really have, to be fair. Malphite, more of a tanky champion, an AP champion as well. Doesn't really do that much, to be honest. Can kind of struggle a little bit against the AD bruisers, but if you do build full tank Malphite, if you do get a kind of an early game lead, and if you get a lot of armor, then it's going to be really hard for these other... these other AD bruisers to really do any damage to you. Sorry, I keep yawning. I've been casting for 4 hours. I tried to record this video. My audio messed up, so I'm recording it for a second time now, and it's getting quite tiring. But anyway, we're still carrying on. Irelia as well. I've been getting a little bit more play in the jungle, in the mid lane, also in the Baron lane as well. Is probably not as strong as other AD bruisers, but we'll see how the meta evolves. I feel like Irelia is getting more priority because the other champions that have been nerfed, so maybe we might see Irelia move up into the S tier. We'll have to wait and find out about that one. Jarvan doesn't really get that much play in the Baron lane because of the recent nerfs. The same with Graves as well. Both these champions were really strong in the Baron lane before, but now they're not as strong anymore because of the changes to the champions itself, changes to the items as well that they used to build. And yeah, just not as strong as what they used to be. But they're still in the A tier. It's still fairly good. They're not like terrible in any way, so you can still give them a try if you want to. Kennen as well, very niche champion. Again, these AP champions are not really that strong at the moment. But, you know, Kennen has a slicing maelstrom available, has a big ultimate as well that can be really impactful during team fights. But in the laning phase, you can struggle a bit. You can kind of get bullied out, which you're kind of supposed to be the bully as a Kennen, but it feels like you're just being the one that's being bullied out anyway by the AD bruisers. So maybe a few changes might need to happen to Kennen. Jax as well in the Baron lane, same thing. Jax is kind of, you know, a bit stronger in the jungle, but Jax in the early game can struggle quite a bit, which is why we see jungle Jax a lot more, because he's able to farm a lot safer. He's able to scale up a lot easier into the late game, as he won't be put under any pressure. But in the lane phase, in Baron lane, he can get punished by the likes of Fiora, Set, Jace, Camille, all these champions that are kind of a bit more early game orientated. Dr. Mundo as well is still quite a strong champion, does do a lot of damage. But the only problem with Dr. Mundo is that he doesn't really do well against constant damage. He does well against a lot of burst damage, so like AP champions, which are normally quite good for Dr. Mundo. Against these AD bruisers, Dr. Mundo doesn't really do too much. He can buy items like Bramble Vest or like tank items and everything as well, but other than that, he's still kind of struggling a little bit. He is a good tank to play, but is struggling a little bit. Then we move on to B. Singed and Trendemir, both very unique champions. You can pick them both up, but I wouldn't really recommend them. They're both quite weak at the moment. They don't really offer too much in solo queue as well. And the same with Kayle. Kayle can scale quite well into the mid and the late game and can be really strong. But the only problem is that getting to that point is a really hard part with Kayle. The early game with Kayle, you need to know what your limits are. You need to know how to play safe, what to do, etc., things like that as well. So that's why Kayle's down the B tier, especially after nerfs as well. They kind of gutted Kayle a little bit with the nerfs and made her early game even harder and made her late game worse. So a little bit difficult. And then down into the C tier, Nasus and I was about to say Trendemir again. Nasus and Teemo, wouldn't really recommend to play any of these two champions. Nasus takes way too long to get online, can be punished really easy and just zoned out, so he can't get any stacks on his abilities. And Teemo just doesn't offer anything. I mean, it's just a useless champion at the end of the day. But hey, don't take my tier list for granted. Again, it's my opinion. You could probably carry games with Teemo if you really want to. It's all up to you. Moving on to the jungle, Lee Sin in the S plus tier with Kha'Zix. Even after the Lee Sin nerfs, I still feel like Lee Sin is the best jungler in the game. It was like a 2 second cooldown or something on his second ability. Yip de doo. Doesn't really do that much, to be fair. Honestly, Lee Sin is still a really, really mobile champion. Really, really strong as well. Kha'Zix as well, a great assassin in the jungle. We saw Sync really pop off on Kha'Zix during the weekend of the WREC. If you can get that early game lead, if you can get a few items with these two champions, you can pretty much run away with the entire game, which is what I feel like you can't really do with the other champions that are in S tier, but we'll get to that just now. Yep, moving on to S tier. Nuno and Willump, an AP mage with Evelynn and with Morgana. Again, you don't really see AP junglers too much because it's kind of overrun at the moment with these AD bruisers. But Nuno and Willump is a great tank. Has a lot of crowd control, a lot of zone control as well. A lot of AP damage. That, again, if you need AP damage, then Nunu is a great champion to pick up. Evelynn as well with her invisibility. My God, just delete Evelynn from the get. Evelynn is just so annoying to deal with. Honestly, if she can get ahead, she gets level 5 before you're like level 4 in the duo lane. She can just come up invisible in lane. You're not even level 5 yet, and you have to force summoners or you just die, basically. Kind of Evelynn thing to do. You just farm up, get to level 5, turn invisible, just kill everyone. Seems like that's the way with Evelynn. And then Morgana as well as the other AP jungler. Morgana's the sort of champion that's has a lot of jungle clear. It's really, really good. Can offer a little bit in terms of ganking, but it's more to do with, like, again, scaling up to the mid and late game, being able to use that black shield, being able to use that wave clear to help your team out, but can't really do that much in terms of ganking and in the early game. Then we move on to the other champions. Olaf and Jax, in my opinion, better in the jungle than in the Baron lane because you can farm up that little bit easier in the early game, and you can clear the jungle quite quickly as well with these two champions. Again, early game ganking pressure, not really too high with these two champions, but if you can scale, get to the mid and the late game, get a few items with these champions, and you can basically 1v9 the game. Kind of the same situation with the other bruisers as well that got two of them got nerfed. Jason Camille did get nerfed, but I still think they're both really, really strong junglers. And Fiora as well. Fiora again, the queen. Oh my God, I really need to stop yawning. You can tell I'm tired after all this casting. I could honestly move Fiora up to the S plus tier. Could be the queen of the jungle as well. I feel like sometimes she could struggle a little bit in the jungle, but she can clear jungle quite quickly. Again, it's just trying to scale into the mid and late game as well. But Fiora, really, really strong. Jason Camille, also very, very strong in the jungle. Not really too much else to say there because I've already explained them in the Baron lane. Rengar, I can honestly move up. Rengar does absolutely disgusting damage, especially with his ultimate as well. Really, really strong champion. Again, sometimes you can step a little bit too far with Rengar, kind of get a little bit put off guard. But sometimes he can be really, really strong as well. He can just one-shot the AD carries. Vi's not really seeing too much play at the moment. The only reason being is that kind of the item build and the way that Vi works is kind of a bit, different to other AD bruisers. But the great thing about Vi is her lockdown and why she's still, in my opinion, is still quite a strong jungler. If you can use the assault and battery, if you can use all of her shielding and her knockbacks and everything as well, she can still be a really strong champion. The same with Jarvan as well. Again, we don't really see Jarvan too much, but his lockdown potential, his early ganking potential as well with Flag and Drag is very, very nice. Graves as well. Not the best jungler, but still up there. Can still farm really well into the mid and late game again. Go for that crit build, do a lot of damage. Wukong, in my opinion, is still stronger in the jungle than in the Baron lane, even though they are trying to move Wukong into the Baron lane. Wukong just fits the jungle just a lot better, with the clone, with his healing, with his attack speed he gets from his third ability, and even his ultimate as well. He's just fit for the jungle. I don't know why Riot are trying to move him into the Baron lane with all the nerfs and everything, but I guess that's what they want, but it's all fine. And again, Wukong is still quite strong in the jungle anyway. Pantheon is all about that early game priority, trying to get them early ganks, trying to use the Grand Skyfall to try and gank as many lanes as possible. With Pantheon, you need an early game lead because you don't really scale that much, or that well, sorry, into the mid and the late game. So you need to try and get that early pressure, but he does do a lot of damage. He does clear the jungle very, very well, and he can be very effective. Riven, not really as strong as like Jace, Fiora, and Camille, the Baron laners that can be really fit in the jungle. But again, Riven can move around the map quite quickly. She has a lot of mobility. She can dash over walls. She can try and get some cool ganks off as well with her knockups and with her ultimate, and you have a stun available as well. So Riven can still work. She is quite strong. The same with Set as well before I get to Xin Zhao. Same with Set, again, did get nerfed. A little bit less attack speed, a little bit less attack damage as well, but Set can still work fine in the jungle. And in Xin Zhao as well, we haven't really seen too much again. I think it's because of the situation that we're in at the moment with these AD bruisers. Xin Zhao doesn't really do too well into AD bruisers in the early game. He can do quite a bit of damage, but he doesn't really scale again that well into the late game. He's kind of he's not really a main initiator. He doesn't really engage too well. He can try and engage if he does land his second ability and dash in, but when you dash in, you just take a lot of damage, and it's just absolutely disgusting to play Xin Zhao sometimes. A tier. Both these champions can work okay. Trendemir and Dr. Mundo, obviously Trendemir received some nerfs to the jungle quite recently, but in lower elo, both these champions can work really well. Dr. Mundo, you can play as a full tank. Trendemir, you can play as like that kind of late game scaling carry that I've mentioned before with Jackson Olaf. But both these champions can still work fine. And you move down to the B tier. All these champions I wouldn't really recommend. They probably work in lower elos. In terms of when you get into the higher elos, I wouldn't really recommend any of these champions. They're very niche picks. Again, that probably work in lower elo, but again, they're not really strong in my opinion. I know I said I talked about like ease of playing the champions. Some of these champions are really easy to play, but they're just not as strong. They don't have the same carry potential as the other champions higher up, like Trendemir, Dr. Mundo, you know, Lee Sin, Kha'Zix, etc. Champions like that. So I'm not going to go into too detail. You know, Rammus, insane, really, really tanky at times, but can't really do too much. Really, really easy to kite around and just deal a bunch of damage. Again, Musty, really, really hard to play. Can just get countered by crowd control. Shyvana doesn't really do a lot of damage. She doesn't have any engage, any disengage or anything like that. You kind of have to just jump in and try and do as much damage as possible, but then you just get crowd control again. It's really hard. And again, Mumu does really offer too much. Probably better in the support role at the moment, to be honest, than jungle. But yeah, that's my opinion anyway. Moving on to the mid lane. Zen and Diana, best junglers. I mean, best mid laners. Wow, I say junglers. Zen and Diana, best assassins, best mid laners in the current meta. I don't think anyone can really argue with that. No nerfs were changed. There was only enough to like items for Zed, but overall, it's completely fine still. So Zed, still completely fine. Diana as well, still completely fine. Both of them, a lot of damage, great assassins, great outplay potential. Can offer a bit of crowd control as well with the two champions. And yeah, just overall, if you're looking for mid laners, then them two are definitely the two to pick up. And then after that, it gets really, really close, to be fair. I feel like between A and A plus and A tier, there's a lot of champions. There's a lot of champions that you can pick up depending on your play style, depending on who you want to play. All these champions work great in different situations. I think Irelia is a better mid laner than barrel laner at the moment, especially when you're against these assassins and against these mages. If you can dodge the crowd control and if you can play aggressive early game with all the dashes that Irelia has available, she can be very strong and she can get that early game lead. Katarina received a buff, Impact 3.0A, which moves her up into S tier. She does get countered a bit by crowd control, but if you know how to play Katarina, if you can jump around and do really well, then she could be really impactful. Twisted Fate, same sort of thing, same sort of unique thing with Twisted Fate. He's all about the stun cards, he's all about rotating around the map, using his ultimate to try and get to the Baron and the duo lane, trying to get his other lanes ahead rather than his own lane. Ziggs as well. This champion always does the most damage and is just the most disgusting mage in my opinion still. Just throw bombs, do a bunch of damage, play safe, just stay in the back line, and you'll just do really, really well, to be honest. That's all you really need to know with Ziggs. That's why he's still up in the S tier. Galio's still up in the S tier as well. Really, really strong, whether played as a tank or whether played as an AP champion as well. It's quite nice, to be fair, to be able to play Galio against AP comps. Would we recommend him against AD comps, even though he can still offer quite a bit in terms of wave clear, knock-ups, Grand Skyfall, everything like that. Not Grand Skyfall, Grand Entrance, sorry. And everything as well. I keep getting them two mixed up, the Galio and the Pantheon ulti. I'll have to check it after this after this recording. Yasuo, don't go 0-10 this champion like I did a couple of days ago on stream. But it's still a really, really strong champion, especially because Solari Childblade is still in the game. One item gives Yasuo 100% crit, which is disgusting. That really needs to be changed. I don't know how they're going to change it, but yeah. A lot of outplay potential, a lot of damage, a lot of dashing around. Especially if you have other knockups on your team like Alistar, Galio, then again, one of them niche picks that can be picked up really, really well. Ahri as well, really, really good mage. God, I'm losing my voice by talking too much over this past weekend. Ahri is a really good mage as well. In the mid lane, can offer way too much with the charm, with all the dashes. Her roaming potential is really, really strong. Orianna as well, that mid lane wave clear mage. Does scale a lot into the mid and the late game as well, and is quite nice. Jace as well, even after nerfs, still really, really strong in the mid lane. I've already kind of mentioned about him already. Carly, again, her early game is not that strong, but she can scale well into late game. Lucian, kind of interesting that we saw Snitch play Lucian mid lane, to be honest, with this Manamune build. So I have to definitely give that a try and see what that's like with mid lane Lucian. But I feel like Lucian overall is still really, really I feel like Lucian overall is still a really, really fun champion. Can be played really, really well, to be fair. Riven is not that great in the mid lane, but can still work really well. Again, with all her mobility. Akshan is one of them really interesting mid lane champions. Doesn't really work too well in the duo lane, but mid lane he works really, really well, which is quite nice. Corki, again, more of a duo lane champion, but can still work in the mid lane as well. Morgana, we talked about already, the wave clear and everything she offers, the black shield, the dark bindings, her ultimate, everything is just really, really strong. Wouldn't really recommend for really solo queue. I wouldn't really say she's like a solo queue mage, to be fair. There's probably other champions that you can pick up instead. Fizz, great assassin, really, really good. If you can get ahead with Fizz and land charm the waters and one shot AD carries, she can be really, really good, or he can be really, really good. Veigar, great scaling champion. The baby cage as well, the cage that you can use with Veigar's third ability is a great tool in Wild Rift, especially because the map is a lot smaller, so you can zone quite a lot of enemies off, and again, if you scale, you can be really, really strong. So in my opinion, S and A plus tier, really, really close together. A lot of champions there, as you can see, a lot of champions that you can pick up and give a try. Then we will move down onto the A tier. Now, the A tier is champions that, in my opinion, not as strong as A plus and S, but can still work quite well. We talk about Renekton mid. I don't think he's as strong as the other AD bruisers that you can play in mid lane and the AD assassins. Can still kind of get punished as well with how much outplay potential the other mid lane champions have. Aurelion Sol is great for roaming, but the champion doesn't really do a lot of damage and is quite hard to play as well, so I wouldn't really recommend. Brand as well, not a bad mid laner, but really hates to play against these sort of assassins, AD bruisers, because if you miss your stun, then you're really vulnerable. Kind of same with Gragas as well, kind of a struggle a little bit as a melee champion against these AD bruisers and AD assassins, but we're seeing a lot more AP Gragas in the mid lane, so it'll be quite interesting to see if we see a little bit more. Maybe it will go up a little bit in my tier list if we see more play of Gragas. And then B tier is just all these very unique champions. Seraphine, Lux, Annie, and Kayle. Again, Kayle I already mentioned. Kind of got gutted in the previous patch. Annie is a very unique champion that you can pick up and try and play. Lux and Seraphine as well. Again, they don't really offer too much, but you can still play them and give them a try. Moving on to ADC, my main role. Moving on down to the duo lane. This might be a little bit longer than the other ones, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see depending on time, because I don't want this video to be too long. Varus and Kha'Zix still the best two AD carries in my opinion, closely followed by pretty much all the champions in the S tier in my opinion. Honestly, anyone in the S tier could definitely move up into the S plus tier if you understand how to play the champion. But for me, Varus, a lot of crowd control, a lot of poking, a lot of safe play, really, really good. And Kai'Sa as well. Kai'Sa is just the best in my opinion solo queue carry. AD carry at the moment, with the amount of damage that she can deal, with all the movement and momentum and everything that you can do with Kai'Sa. She can turn invisible, she can dash around, really, really good. Ezreal, as mentioned, all these S tier champions could probably move up into S plus tier as well because they are so strong. Ezreal's a very safe champion, works really well with Yuumi at the same time to give you extra damage. Very safe, can stay back, just farm up, scale up into late game. When you get into late game, he can be really, really good. The only thing with Ezreal is that he's very skill reliant, or skill shot dependent, I should say. You have to land your skill shots. If you just auto attack with Ezreal, he's useless, so you have to make sure you land your skill shots. That's why he is kind of hard to play at times, and he can be quite hard as well. The same with Corki as well, can be kind of skill shot dependent at the same time. There's so many weird builds going around with Corki at the moment. I still think the best build is like the Crit Corki build with like Man Immune, sorry, Charge Blade, etc. But we've seen like Black Cleaver Corki, which is really interesting. But for me, still really, really strong champion at the moment, and still works really, really well, to be fair. Going into the mid and late game especially, can still be really, really strong. Xayah as well, a champion that is very, very hard to play, but if you can master Xayah, she can be really, really strong. Very safe champion as well, has her feathers to keep her safe, has her ultimate as well, which makes her untargetable. Same with Caitlyn as well, we're a very safe champion to play, really, really long range, can play very aggressive in lane phase as well and poke out the enemy champion with all her abilities. Has her traps as well for zoning potential, which is quite nice. And then Lucian as well, Lucian with all his dashes, with all his damage available. Sometimes you can play a little bit over aggressive with Lucian, but most of the time Lucian works completely fine. And then finally, we talk about the AP mages. I have added some AP mages this time. In my opinion, Orianna is the best AP mage out of all of them. With Orianna, just a lot of wave clear, a lot of damage potential, a lot of scaling as well. And if you don't know, with Orianna, she actually does well with trading in the lane phase as well, because she can auto attack quite a bit, and she can be really strong because the extra amount of damage she gets from her auto attacks. Vayne and Draven, again, I put them in A plus tier. Only reason being is just how difficult they are to play, in my opinion. It might take you a little time to get used to how how Vayne works or how Draven works, and how different they are really to other champions in the game. But if you can get used to champions, if you can get an early game lead with Draven, if you can get to late game with Vayne, then they definitely can be like S or even S plus tier as well. So again, even though I put them A plus tier, don't worry, they're still really good champions to play. But again, it's just ease of play, quite difficult to play. The other two champions I put here as well, I forgot to put Morgana here as well, but Morgana will probably be an A plus as well. You got all these other AP champions. Don't really offer as much as what Orianna does, but Ziggs and Brand really, really strong still as AP mages. If you do want to play AP mages in the duo lane, we see a lot of competitive. I wouldn't recommend it in solo queue, but if you do need a bit of AP damage, then Ziggs and Brand will work completely fine. We move on to A tier. Jinx and Tristana just not as good of a hyper carry as what they used to be. Doesn't really work well with any of the items that are really in the game at the moment. Again, Solari Charge Blade doesn't work well with Tristana or Jinx, so they can kind of struggle a little bit, especially with other champions that work really well with Solari Charge Blade. And again, they don't really have the range or the lane pressure as well, like Caitlyn has, for example, or Ezreal, etc. But yeah, not really as good as a hyper carry, but can still be really, really strong. Misfortune, especially in the meta at the moment, is quite hard to play with not a lot of mobility. The same with Ashe as well. Misfortune, you really need to stay at the back and use your bullet time and try and get as much damage as possible. She can offer a lot of early game threat, but at the moment, not really too much, and can struggle a little bit. Ashe, I wouldn't really recommend in solo queue. It is really good when you get to competitive and when you play like these 5 versus 5 games. In the solo queue, wouldn't recommend, because you want to kind of communicate when you're using your Enchanted Crystal Arrow, when you're using your slows, when you're trying to poke down the enemy champions and everything as well. But when you're playing solo queue, it can be a little bit tough because you can use your Enchanted Crystal Arrow and it could be completely useless. Jhin, unfortunately, didn't get buffed. Is the same champion as he always is. Ghostblade got buffed. Edge of Night got nerfed. Kind of balanced itself out, but unfortunately for Jhin, still sitting down in the A tier. And then you have Veigar as well, the other mage that I haven't mentioned yet. Just can't really offer too much in the duo lane, to be fair. Can try and use a cage to stun up as well, but most of the time you want to play like Ziggs, Brand, Morgana, or Orianna in the duo lane if you're on an AP mage. And then moving on to B tier, as mentioned already, Akshan doesn't really work too well in the duo lane. It's more of a mid lane champion because of how aggressive he wants to play and how he wants to utilize his passive shield and his jumps or his hook shots or anything like that, whatever you want to call it. And Senna as well. Senna is like farming Senna. You don't really want to play farming Senna because you want to get as much souls as possible. If this was fasting Senna, I'd probably put her maybe in like A+, but again, I wouldn't recommend playing fasting Senna in solo queue because you need to have a support that understands how fasting Senna works. Last one is the support tier list. At the top, Nami still up there with Lulu as two of the best enchanters in the game, in my opinion. I would pick Nami over Lulu if you did have a choice, because Nami has a lot of crowd control, has a lot of team fight pressure, has a lot of healing as well, and can buff the AD carry or your carries quite a lot. Lulu is kind of more dependent on your team because you only really got shields, heals, movement speed, ultimate that gives you a bunch of health, and then you have your Pixie for your first ability that does a little bit of damage, but that's about it. But Nami is a lot stronger in solo queue because of the bubble, because of the Nami wave and everything as well. Just the disengage and the engage potential of Nami is definitely up there. Then we look at the other two as well, the other two supports in the S+ tier, Rakan and Thresh. Both of them are very kind of similar in a way. Both of them are great in team fights, great for pick potential as well. Rakan probably a little bit better in team fights because he has his quickness that can go around multiple members. But yeah, Rakan, very slippery support, really, really strong at the moment, very high priority at the moment in competitive play as well. Thresh, on the other hand, one of the best solo queue supports in my opinion, has a lantern to keep your allies safe. If they do click the lantern, make sure you do click the lantern. I got really annoyed one stream because one person didn't click the lantern multiple times, so make sure you click the lantern and keep an eye on that. But with the hook, with the flay, with the box and everything that Thresh has available, really, really strong. Moving on to S tier, I want to quickly talk about Yuumi. Yuumi, in my opinion, is not completely broken, especially in solo queue. I feel like Yuumi is definitely strong. Can definitely offer a lot. If you're playing trio queue or duo queue, she's definitely a lot better. She'll probably move into the S+ tier, but in solo queue, not as strong. But she still offers a lot of healing, a lot of shielding, and yeah, just a lot of damage as well that she can give to her other allies. Brom, really good disengage support. Doesn't really do too much in the laner phase. It can struggle a little bit during the laner phase because if you can't land your first ability or if you can't get close enough to auto attack anyone, then he kind of becomes useless in the laner phase. Again, he's more of a disengaged and engaged support. That's why he's not really up there as, you know, one of the best supports. Morgana, we're seeing a little bit of support play. We saw it a couple of weeks ago, Ryu playing support Morgana as like a full AP build, which was quite interesting. As sort of like an AP damage source. So if you do want that, you can go ahead and try give that a try. But yeah, Morgana with all the crowd control she has available, the Black Shield as well. So if you are against a lot of crowd control, say for example, if you're against a Thresh or a Rakan, Morgana's a great pick. So you can use the Black Shield on your AD carry or on yourself to just protect you from any sort of crowd control. Then we move on to the other tanks. Galio and Leona, both of them are very similar. To be fair, both of them have great crowd control. Leona kind of more focused on single target. Galio more focused on the team fights. So I think Galio is a little bit above Leona in that way. But Galio has a lot of damage in lane phase as well, but Leona can play very, very aggressive. If you play Leona with a lane like Draven, for example, very aggressive, very, very awesome duo that you can play to try and get ahead early on. But yeah, Galio has a grand entrance and everything as well. Kind of already explained Galio a little bit, but yeah, still great as a support. Senna gets memed quite a bit, to be fair, but I still think Senna is quite good as a support. You just need to understand how to play her and her limits, because it's kind of like playing a dual lane carry, or like kind of playing two dual lane carries in the bot lane. But if you don't really want to rely on your AD carry, if you're playing solo queue and you want to carry yourself, then Senna's a pretty good pick. Alistar really struggles in the lane phase, to be honest, especially against all the champions above. Especially when you use like Headbutt Pulverize, Alistar can kind of just be stuck there and just being kind of a bit of a problem, I guess you can say. So yeah, can't really do that much, unfortunately, when he headbutt pulverizes, because it can get black shielded, or you can just get stunned by Brom, or you can get poked down by Nami and Lulu, for example. You can see all the champions above just kind of counter Alistar in a way, but Alistar is still quite strong, especially if you get to the mid and late game, get to the team fights as well. If you can land a really, really good headbutt pulverizer, it will be really strong. And then we talk a little bit about Janna. Now, Janna's moved a little bit down for me. Only reason being is that she's more of a disengaged champion. At the moment, supports love to roam around the map. They like to try and get picks, which is really good for champions like Rakan, Thresh, Galio, Leona, and Alistar. But Janna, you can't really do that. You can't really roam to the Rift Herald. You can't really roam around the map, because she doesn't really have that engage potential, or that potential to try and carry your team when it gets to roaming around the map. She's more to do with disengage, more to do with healing and shielding as well. She does have a tornado, but it's just not as impactful. Moving on down to A, I want to talk a little bit about Sona. Sona is a great late game champion. If you can scale into the mid and late game, she is one of the best supports in the entire game. All the shields, heals, everything that she can offer is quite nice. But it's just getting to that point, which is a really, really hard part. Her early game, really, really weak. You should buy tier, play as passive as possible, and just scale up into the mid and late game. Seraphine, kind of the same thing. She kind of relies a lot on her ultimate. If you can land a good ultimate, if you can scream at the top of your lungs and land a great ultimate, then happy days. But again, doesn't really offer too much in the lane phase. She can poke and stun a little bit and get roots, heal a little bit and shield a little bit. But other than that, doesn't really offer too much and isn't really that great. And Set as well. Set doesn't really get played a lot in support, because the tank build for Set is not really there yet, to be honest, and doesn't really offer Set more damage. With Set, you want to build more like Blade Rune King, Black Cleaver, which you don't really want to do as a support, because you kind of want to be a tanky Set. But with Set, you can play really, really aggressive in the early game. You can go for Aftershock, try and play aggressive and try and get an early game advantage. And then lastly, we move down to the B tier. All these champions are just not really that great, to be fair. They can get countered really, really hard. We did see Mumu in WREC, Protobelt, Abyssal Mask, Rylus Crystal Scepter, and Mumu. It was really, really fun to cast that game. If you haven't watched it, you can probably watch the VODs. Team Dark against Control for the WREC. Make sure you check that out, because I was casting that game with Hells, and it was really fun to watch. Lux as well, with the potential and everything, doesn't really, do that much. Again, you could try and root and build her 4 AP if you want to, but other than that, she's not really strong. Again, Blitzcrank, if you land a hook, happy days. If not, she's kind of useless. He's kind of useless, sorry. And it's Soraka with all the heals. Kind of gets countered by one item. But again, all these supports can still work really, really well, but in the end, they are down in the bottom of my tier list. But that's it. That's everything. As you can see, all my S plus tiers, my S tier, A plus tier. But yeah, this is all my tier list. It's kind of, I'd call it my website, but the guys behind the scenes obviously work on all the graphics and everything, so that's why the website looks really, really cool, really, really fancy. But I do all the tier lists, I do all the guides on this website. So again, I will link Wildrified down in the description. Again, any comments or anything, let me know down in the comments as well. And yeah, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, make sure you stay tuned for more Wild Rift content. A to Z guide for the next champion coming up very soon, and a lot more cool, awesome content. So as always, take care, and I'll see you all very soon. Peace.